Good afternoon. Welcome to the very first webinar from VA Pro magazine. If you like this one, then hopefully we can make a webinar part of our regular editorial calendar, and so we'll look forward to your feedback at the end. There's just a few housekeeping things before we start. You may have seen, and some of you have seen because you joined in, that below the webinar there is a chat box. So please do sign in and let us have your questions and comments as we go along. You don't have to wait until the end if there's something you want to know or if you have an aha moment. I'll collect them as we go along, and we might deal with some of them throughout the first section of this webinar, and then we'll answer as much as we possibly can in a Q&A session at the end. If the chat box isn't in a convenient position for you to view everything at once, then you can pop it out into its own little window. If you look just below the chat box, there are some small icons, and the one furthest to the right looks like a small square with an arrow coming out. If you click that, then the chat box will pop out on its own, so you can line it up next to the webinar so you can see everything at once. After we've done, there will be a replay available, and I'll send you the link afterwards. You'll also be able to download a set of Sharon's slides too, and I'll send you that information afterwards. So today we're going to talk about mindfulness, and for many virtual assistants here, we know that not only do we have one boss, we can have up to 20, all with very different needs and all guaranteed to want things at exactly the same time. And add to this the demands on our personal lives, our family, perhaps illness in ourselves or in those we care for, and there's a recipe for a lot of stress and possibly ultimately burnout. And it can be very useful to have some strategies that we can use to help us deal with all this. So I'm delighted to be joined by Sharon Layton, who's been a client of my VA business for several years, and we're now also very good friends. She runs a very busy consultancy and has a work and global travel schedule that makes my head spin, and I only watch. I know that mindfulness plays a very large part in her coping mechanism, so I'll now hand across to Sharon to tell you more about her and how mindfulness can help us all every day. So Sharon, over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Jo. As Jo's explained a little bit about my background, like many of you, I do run my own business. My business involves helping very busy managers who work in the pharmaceutical industry to achieve their business goals. I'm very lucky. I work with a real niche of people who actually work in the area of medical information. So they deal with requests of information from doctors and pharmacists and patients who need more information about the drugs that they sell. I've worked in the industry for about 30 years. In the last 8 years, I've been running my own business. But really, about 80% of the work that I do is around project management, managing large projects for clients. And these are usually global or European projects. So a lot of the people that I work with, I don't even see them. And we're often speaking on the phone, either at big, large teleconferences, or we have individual one-to-ones. Luckily, because I'm very well known in the community, a lot of people do know me, and some of them, I've become firm friends with. But a lot of the projects I work on really involve change. It might be a new IT system, a global system, or a European system, or often these days it's a case of the companies putting in regionalisation or globalisation. So the person I'm working with, my client, they've got to be involved in cutting back services, cutting back costs, cutting back teams of people. But these people I work with as my clients, it's very stressful for them because it's not pleasant having to decide, well, if you're cutting back headcount in Italy, the people that you know. And it's also on top of their day job, which is why I come in. They want me to run all that projects. So really, mindfulness for me, my business comes in because what I often do with those people that I work with, my clients, is offer them not only project management skills and knowing a lot about how to do all this job, but a lot of personal support and emotional support. And I can do this because that's the sort of job that I was doing for very many years. So really today, what I want to talk to you about is this very useful life skill of mindfulness. And in fact, I'll call it mindfulness practice because it's easy to learn about something, but never really practice it. It's helped me tremendously at work, although my impetus to start doing it was really because of a lot of life changes that I was going through and frankly, really struggling to cope with everything. But I found through learning about it that I realized that it's very useful in the business as well. So let's look at the next slide. And this is what I'm going to cover today in about half an hour. And then we've got plenty of time for questions. And please ask whatever you want. The first thing we're going to go through is what is mindfulness and what it isn't, and why it's important to think about it in our business and with our clients. And then talk briefly about the benefits of using mindfulness practice at work and in a work setting. Tell you a little bit about ways, and if you're interested to take this further, how you can do that. And I guess the fact that you signed up to this webinar is one way. The fact that you're thinking, oh, I want to know more about it. And then the last one is to give you 6 tips about how you can be more mindful each day. Now I'm going to start with a qualifier. I'm not a mindfulness trainer or a teacher. I am what we call a practitioner. But I think that's why this is helpful for you today. Is, you know, we have a similar situation to you, and I'm running my own business, and like, you know, I could be you, and you could be me. So let's think about our working lives these days. And I'm sure a lot of you work from home or maybe working in a remote unit. Over 30 years, working life has changed tremendously. We have torrents of emails from lots of different people, or we're managing lots of different projects. We have a deluge of data. I don't know about you, but now my computers are almost full of thousands and thousands of files. And in fact, I've had to buy new computers as a result of that. We also have lots of distractions in our jobs. We often have to also manage social media and things like Facebook, maintaining statuses, Twitter, etc., etc. And lastly, you know, in the main ones here, we also have many interruptions. I think now they've when they measured it in the workplace, it's 3 minutes before you get an interruption, be that an email or somebody come to see you or a phone call. This all adds up to really seeing escalating expectations from our clients, but more importantly, escalating expectations of ourselves. You know, we have to be all things to all people. And as Joe said, you know, juggling lots of clients. Okay. So where are we in our workplace? Now, on the left-hand side, hopefully you can see that what we crave are all those things that make us highly productive. But often what we get on the right-hand side in black is what tends to happen in real life. So, for example, we know that it's best to really focus on one job at a time. That's the best way to get it done. It's the most efficient and effective. Yet we always end up multitasking. We might need to spend time thinking about maybe either a project we're working on or really our own business. But often we're rushing to do things, and I find now I tend to scan emails rather than really read them. We want stability, and certainly in the workplace there's often lots of constant change. We need quality, and for me, I find a lot of my clients have cut back so much that everything has to work with ruthless efficiency, and yet things go wrong. You know, how do we make allowances for that? And whereas we might want to enjoy life and enjoy our working life and have some sense of tranquility, there can often be a situation of stress and anxiety. So really, this encapsulates it all for me. It's a wonderful cartoon. Who would we rather be? The person on the left, which may be many of us today, with overwhelming demands, you know, lots of things we're thinking about, what you should have done yesterday, what's going to come up tomorrow, or would we rather be the dog that at that very moment in time we can look and we can see this beautiful vista with beautiful trees and sunshine. And I'm very lucky because that reflects my window today here in South Wales. So mindful or mindful. Let's backtrack a little bit about where I come in on this, because my training really is a scientist. My PhD was on the study of the brain and the functioning of the brain in certain situations. So really, as a scientist and as somebody very data rational, I tend to maybe, when I was young and naive, think about the picture on the left. This is what life I wanted to be like. We wanted to learn more and do more. But of course, luckily, approaching things from more the Middle Ages, it's I realised that in fact life's a bit more like the spaghetti mess on the right. But what's important is how do we cope with those situations? And I'm sure many of us have been there. So I'm just going to use another graphic here. And if we might want to think about our life index, a bit like the FTSE index for economics, is if you had to do a timeline, and I've done this before as part of coaching and counselling, is where would be the ups and downs in life? If you had to draw it, what would be the events that were going on? Now, anything, of course, above the line is where we really want to be. We want things to be great. Whereas below the line, now it's all very well to deal with situations that you can't avoid, like bereavement or maybe illness, or in my case also redundancy. They do unpleasant feelings and emotions arise in that, and some of us may find that difficult to cope with, and certainly I did. And during those times when it was also life events were colliding with work, and I was working for a large company, I was very lucky to have counselling at work that was available for free. But what about now? What are the situations now? How do we actually cope with situations? It's a bit like the end point here, when it's a sustained period of stress. And there is actually, if you're in a period of high stress and you just want to measure, well, how bad is it? And as somebody who's data rational, I want some metrics. I did a stress test called Holmes and Rafi, and at the very end we give you a link so you can try it yourself if you want. And you have to look down and say, what are all those things that have gone on for me in the last year? And then you get it's a bit like doing a questionnaire, and you get a score at the end. And they're saying, if you get any more than 300 points, then you really need to watch out, because you've got so much stress in your life that you are likely to have some health problem as a result of it. And I guess they're thinking about anxiety and depression as well as maybe more physical things. Well, when I tried it, I scored over 510. So I didn't really need to do that to know that I had a very busy last year with separating, divorce, a chronic illness problem, selling a family home, moving for the 6th time in 12 years. My son went off to university, and there was one event that they didn't include on there that I'm sure could be fairly stressful at times, which was online dating, but that's another story. So really, today is about how do we deal with life when it's below the line rather than above the line. And the great thing I found is, despite having this horrendous year, is in fact I've been able to approach the year as not a year of loss, but a year of opportunity. And I know that is totally down to the training that I've done and the courses that I've done around mindfulness, but especially my practice. So it's really helpful. I can endorse it for stress and anxiety. So because it helped me so much in my life, and I was very lucky to have a very skilled, experienced trainer, I thought I wished I'd had these skills in my working life, because it would have made such a lot of difference. I certainly wouldn't have had a lot of the problems that I was experiencing during that time working for very high pressured environments. Which brings me to, what is mindfulness? Now, there's a quote at the top here, and I know you can all read. And it's, in some ways, you might look at this and say this is a cliche. The past is history, the future's mystery, today's a gift, why it's called the present. But it is a cliche because it reflects real life. If you think about all those things that are going on in your mind when you're sitting there and you're worrying, what do you worry about? I'm sure I'm the same as all of you. I think about things that might have happened yesterday, and I might worry about the things that are happening tomorrow. So, like, for example, yesterday was Sunday. It's a great day. It's maybe a family day for a lot of you. Sunday night comes, and I don't know about you, but I was thinking about all those things that I really needed to have done by Monday. So inevitably, I sort of sat down and started wanting to check various things. So I was already starting to worry about the future rather than thinking, well, it's Sunday. I could be doing something a lot more pleasurably. So that's one definition of mindfulness. It's about training yourself to stay in the present rather than being drawn to the past or the future. That's one definition. So let's look at another definition that might help us to explain a bit more. And I love this picture because for me, this is one of the embodiments of mindfulness. It's about, can you approach life from an attitude of joy and pleasure, no matter what is happening. So it's about changing our attitude to learn to direct our attention to the experience as it unfolds. So if it's great, you can enjoy it. If you're struggling with something, then it's how are you dealing with that? And you can approach it with open-minded curiosity and acceptance. So it means that it's training us to respond skillfully to what's happening right now as opposed to the past and the future. Okay. But really, for all of us, what would be the elevator pitch? What would be the speech, the short speech about mindfulness? And I really like this one best of all. And this came from a very wise man. And he says, for him, mindfulness is about learning not to make a big deal out of anything. So others around us might catastrophize and say, oh, this is dreadful. Our clients may be very stressed, they've got lots going on. And for us, can we stand back and say, look, this is not such a big deal. It's not a problem. I can take that off your hands and make it all happen for you. And what happens then is, of course, you are seen as the saviour, and people, of course, want to work with you more and more. So this picture, I think, is a perfect metaphor. Is we want to stay as that woman on the ground watching all of the balloons rising in the hot air. We might want to think of our thoughts as balloons just rising, and rather than being taken with them, we can acknowledge them, accept them, and then let them go without them necessarily really influencing our emotional state quite so much. So that's why I say mindfulness is often around training our attitudes and our beliefs. So hopefully that's helped a little bit about giving you some definitions of what mindfulness really is. So how do you learn about mindfulness? How do you practice it? It's really important to realize there's really three parts to it, and a really good course or practitioner, somebody who's training you in mindfulness, uses all three parts. The first one is what we might call a movement component, and this is doing something like yoga, and I'm sure there's most places that have yoga classes nearby, or different ways in which you can learn. Tai Chi as a Chinese martial art, that's often used by people who want to practice mindfulness. And then there's lastly another form that you may not have heard of called Qigong. This is actually something that I learned myself from my mindfulness trainer and teacher, a very wise woman, Sue Weston. And it's a bit like Tai Chi, but it's not a martial art, it's just a movement component. And it's using very structured movements in a way to really underpin our meditation. The second part of the meditation is we practice often something known as breath meditation, and I'm going to take you through a very short guided one in a minute. So we can even do it over the phone. And then lastly, the other part that's really important to have in mindfulness is learning how to properly relax ourselves, relax our bodies, because if we're very stressed or anxious, then we have lots of changes in our bodies. Like our shoulders might get very tense, or you might find that you have a very stiff jaw, or you clench your teeth or grind, or you might find that you get a sore back. There's different ways in which stress affect our bodies. And I know if I'm having a stressful day, my shoulders come up almost so that they're close to the ears. And by using mindfulness techniques, I can just relax and just drop down my shoulders and relax and put my energy more within my body rather than being very tight and clenched up and overthinking things. So that technique, you might find it described as a body scan, a relaxation one, or a body journey. And if you've ever had training for preparation for childbirth, there are similar sort of techniques. It's about a structured way to relax different parts of your body. And a lot of people use it certainly as preparation for sleep. So it's really important to use all three parts of these to around extending your mindfulness practice. So what isn't mindfulness? It's not New Age. It may seem that way in first encounters, certainly if you're quite cynical about things, which I tend to be. It's certainly not New Age, because it's based on literally millennia of practice of these different components. It's not about Buddhism or like a Buddhism light, although the practices have been developed by looking at the best practices within Buddhism. The person who really brought it to the West, John Kabat-Zinn, he took all of the religious component out of it, so it's more of a secular practice now. It's for people with all faiths and none. It's not just meditation alone, although some people might see it that way, and that may be the most regular part that they do is to meditate. And probably one of the biggest misconceptions I had when I first started learning about it was that I thought, oh, that's great, I can just think about great, nice things, good thoughts, and be happy rather than having to deal with the misery of life. And in fact, I've realized, no, the thing about mindfulness is living and dealing with whatever arises, good or bad. So that's what mindfulness isn't, and we've talked a little bit about what it is. So moving on, what's the benefits? And there's been a lot of study done, particularly more and more each year, on the health benefits and also the emotional and mental health benefits. So people who practice mindfulness, it's used as a clinically recognized treatment to reduce anxiety and depression in certain situations. So it's even been approved by this health body, UK government health body, the NICE, as being clinically approved for treating anxiety, depression. It's also used a lot for people who have sleep problems, insomnia. It's more effective, it's more helpful to use something like mindfulness techniques rather than maybe pharmaceuticals. And it's also used a lot in other disease states, including chronic pain. People with chronic pain, they can use mindfulness to help them manage these situations. And lastly, more exciting stuff that's been going on recently is around, you can show that by practicing mindfulness, that you can change not only the function of your brain, but also the structure of your brain to really enhance more helpful behaviours and activity, rather than being drawn away by the emotional side of things. And overall, what it means is that we can become more focused and alert. A really key one, I think, for us at work is around emotional resilience. Is we've got more in the well to be able to deal with things when they start going wrong. And I've got lots of experience of this over the last couple of years. And then the last one, I think the other one, is around taking a different approach to life, looking at things with more impartiality, with more acceptance, looking at people with more compassion, including people that we dislike or don't have an empathy with, or may actively try to avoid. By changing our attitude towards us means that we can have a much better relationship with hopefully with family, with people that we work with. And that's been shown from research that's been done here in the UK. It makes a big difference around managers and leaders, which is why it's been adopted by companies such as Google. It's used in Apple. It's used by MPs are learning how to do mindfulness, and lots of schools and universities are using it because they realise that it has a huge impact on children becoming more effective and having better relationships. So I don't think I really need to tell you the benefits, apart from that there is a large body of proof to show that it can be incredibly helpful. So what we're going to do now is to practice, and what I'm going to do is, I've got a bell here. I'm going to use it to start and finish a time period. So what we're going to do is, for 30 seconds, I want you just to sit in silence, and I want you to do nothing. So hopefully you're still listening, paying attention. Please don't check your phone, don't check Facebook, don't answer emails. I'd like you just literally to sit there and try doing nothing to see what that feels like. So to start with, it's really good to make sure that you're sitting in your chair comfortably. So make sure you're sitting upright with um, 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 your shoulders over your hips, your feet are flat on the floor, your bottom is well back in the seat, and your head is fairly upright. So you're hopefully upright but relaxed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure a period of 30 seconds, and afterwards I'm going to ask you, hopefully using the chat box, to just reflect on how that went for you. So here we go. Here's the start of the bell, and I'll stop it after 30 seconds. Okay, so that was 30 seconds. What did you experience in that time? I've got two questions really to ask you. The first one, how tempted were you just to sit and check something? And the second one was, what was going through your mind? Did you find thoughts starting to crowd in and you trying to remember, did I get something out to defrost for tea? What sort of thoughts and things were going through your mind and body? Please share them through the chat box that everybody can see them, so don't necessarily put down anything confidential. But what I'm going to do is ask Jo to share her experiences of that first. So, Jo, how was that for you?
Yes, I think when you try and concentrate on nothing at all, I think I did find my mind wandering. I was seeing if anybody was asking any questions on the chat, or I was just counting the time and I'd seen how many seconds might be left of the 30 seconds. I did find that quite hard.
Hmm. And that's quite a common experience, is if we just try and sit still and think, oh, I'm just going to take a quiet moment here. And I find this a lot is I'm drawn away. You know, the picture of the girl. Am I going to be caught up like those balloons lifting away, or am I going to try and stay grounded like that girl? So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to practice. I'm going to do this again, and it's going to take a little bit longer this time. It's going to take 2 minutes, and I'd like to repeat that. But what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to just guide you through. It's a 2-minute meditation. It's actually very brief, and we're going to practice by asking you to focus on your breathing in and out. Okay, so same thing again. I'll start and finish with the bell. And what we find is through a guided meditation is really there is no such thing as an empty mind. You can't stop your thoughts. Thoughts come and go. But the thing about the thoughts is what we do with them that causes our stress and anxiety. Something might arise and then we start worrying about it and we take it to an extreme. So what we do when we're meditating is we want to help settle the mind, so we give it something to do. It's a bit like giving a child a toy. If you want to distract a child, then you give it something to play with or something to interact with to distract it. And a very easy way to create calm in a meditation is to balance the length of your in-breath with your out-breath. So I'm going to guide you through it. I'm going to start with the bell. So as before, what you could do is try following the sound, and I hope it comes through clearly, as it fades away. And then I'm going to talk through the meditation and I'll finish using the bell. So as you're sitting there, upright but relaxed, bring your awareness to your breathing. Then very lightly and effortlessly, let it become a little longer. A slightly longer in-breath and a slightly longer out-breath. Simply allow this to happen without effort. To help settle the mind a little more, we balance the length of the in-breath with the out-breath. And a very easy way to do this is to measure the in-breath using a slow count of 3 or 4, and then use the same count as you breathe out. Take your time, there's no rush. You may wish to pause at the end of the out-breath. And if you find you become distracted, no problem, as this is what the mind does. Like those balloons, let the thought go and drift away. So simply let that thought dissolve and kindly and with compassion move your awareness back to the breath, measuring it with the counts. Okay, so that was more guiding you through it, and that actually only took 2 minutes. And I'm sure that many of you could just take 2 minutes to help ground yourself. So Joe, while we're waiting, we would like you to share this on the chat. How did that go this time?
Yes, I actually felt with you guiding that went a lot quicker as well. It didn't. The 30 seconds seemed quite long, as a couple of people have said, but the 2 minutes actually with you guiding that and concentrating on the breath went much quicker. But I did find that I relaxed into it much more, and I was aware of sounds rather than thinking about anything else.
Right. Okay. Anything that Joe, that you want to feedback from the chat box? For some reason, mine's not updating, so I don't want to worry about that.
No, don't worry too much. You see, people have been talking about they close their eyes to stop them being tempted and of looking at other things. So yes, there's no questions as such yet. But if anybody does have any, then do let me know.
Yeah. And certainly closing your eyes is fine. And on the courses that are run around mindfulness, they're actually 8-week courses. They start with it. You start very slowly learning how to do this. They say close your eyes to start with. And if you become more experienced practitioner, you can actually learn to meditate in all manner of situations and with your eyes closed. And I think my record is meditating on a very commuting train between London and Milton Keynes, and I was seated in a tiny little fold down seat. I think I managed to do a 20-minute meditation, which I was really pleased about, but it was perfect for the situation. So yes, if you find you need to close your eyes, then do that. Okay, so that's just a tiny taster of what's involved. So if you learn more about mindfulness and start to practice it, how could you use it in your business or with your clients? And I've identified really there's 3 big gains. The first one is it's about staying grounded. I'm a lot more grounded now emotionally. You know, when I talk about grounded, it's being, our feet are very flat on the floor and I just feel tremendously supported. So in that situation, by being very calm and grounded, it helps calm others around you, particularly if you've got clients who are panicking and things are going wrong. And this may be a very familiar situation. The other big one is in your professional credibility. It means that you totally exude confidence, and so people want to work with you. A lot of our clients come through personal recommendation, and they just know that you're a great person to work with, and that really, I think, makes the biggest difference to me in my business. And I regularly win bids to do projects against huge, great consulting companies like Accenture or McKinsey, and it's because they want to work with somebody that they know and they can trust and they enjoy working with them, and I can offer a lot of support. The second big plus is coping with stress. It's the famine and feast. I don't know about you, but sometimes I find I have 15 projects and it's incredibly manic, and then the next minute suddenly everything stops. And luckily for me at the moment, I'm in the famine situation, which is great because I can use my mindfulness to think, don't panic about not having work on. This is an opportunity for you to have a bit of a break and focus on your business development, ready and preparing for the future. And I think by using these techniques to cope with stress a lot better, it means I find particularly you can be a lot more realistic about what you can do and what you can't do, because you're standing back from a situation rather than being caught in the grip of the stress. Another big one is forgiving yourself for mistakes. Our clients expect us to be perfect, but I'm sure that we expect ourselves to be even more perfect than they do. And instead of getting really irritated and upset about making little mistakes, you can just forgive yourself, because to make mistakes is human. It's how you then come back from the situation that's important. And the third one, I think, is the big one, is having a different attitude to life, is looking at things with equanimity, impartiality, being a lot less judgmental of myself and others, and a lot more compassionate for people by thinking about the situations that they're going through. Means that I can be more compassionate, more empathetic, and more understanding of their situation. And I think that helps, because people think, yeah, I think she really gets where I am and what I'm going through. And that helps them in those intangible ways, rather than just delivering packages or a spreadsheet or a presentation or whatever. It's a more of a human experience. So those are 3 ways that I think that you can use mindfulness in your own business or with your clients with practice. So what are 6 tips that you could use now, whether you're a mindfulness practitioner or you've never done anything like this before? The first one is what I would call check-in, is starting the day right. Is as you're waking up, before you start your day, is just check, how am I today? Are you feeling tired or stressed or energetic? And I think by acknowledging how you're starting the day means it can help you make that day even better. So if you are feeling very tired or slightly stressed, can you be kinder towards yourself? So thinking about eating maybe a little bit more healthily, or making sure that you at least take some time to get some fresh air or a walk. Maybe if you're walking the children to school, can you do that more mindfully and be involved with them rather than worrying about what's going on? So the first tip is starting the day right with a check-in. The second one is, if you're feeling stressed, think about that brief guided meditation that I did. Is you always start with the first one, which is to breathe out, before you then do the slow deep breaths using a count 3 or 4 or 5 and balancing them. That really taps into your body's nervous system, your soothing nervous system, your parasympathetic nervous system. It helps you feel a lot more calmer, makes you relax in your body more, so you're putting less stress and strain on your body. So think about using your breath and balancing your best breath to feel less stressed. The third one is a doing one, and it's try and focus on one task at a time. Try not to looking at all your emails if you're actually in the middle of doing something, which brings me neatly onto the fourth one, which is device distraction. Could you automate your social media? Like today, last night I spotted some things that I wanted to put on my Facebook page. Well, I could time the posts to go up during the day when my people who are following me on my business page are more likely to see it, rather than like 10:30 on a Sunday evening. Can you assign set times to use social media and actually time yourself? Because it's very easy to spend hours doing that. The aim is to try and stay present with what's going on at the moment, rather than worrying about the future and the past. You might not get time to go to a yoga class or to do Tai Chi, or if you're interested to try Qigong. You can actually try mindful eating, thinking more about what you're doing when you're eating rather than mindlessly doing that, driving or walking. Can you engage your 5 senses? So if you're stuck in a traffic jam on busy M25, you can't really go anywhere if it's really slow. There's no way you can speed it all up. You're stuck there. So why don't you make the most of the here and now by looking around? What's the scenery like on the side? Even if you're going through a busy city, there still must be things you can see. There's beauty everywhere around us. And think about engaging your senses. The last one, I think, is around your attitude, is that recognizing that others are suffering too. And you do this a lot through meditation, and accept support from others. Perfectionist nature in my way, and I'm not necessarily good at accepting help. So I found, in fact, by overcoming those two really bad traits, like for example using Jo and her team for help, that made a huge difference around being more relaxed and less stressed. So there's just 6 ways really that you can use mindfulness techniques to help you enjoy life more. So if you are tempted now to think, well, look, I'd really like to look in a bit more about this, is what's the best way to do it? And I just want to point out, I haven't put a book up here because it's a bit like if you decide you want to learn tap dance or ballet, would you go and buy a book? No, you wouldn't. The first thing you'd do is try and see, are there any classes round to where you are that fit in with your schedule? So I would certainly say the best thing is to attend an 8-week course. The mindfulness courses have a very defined structure over 8 weeks, and that's to really help people to learn about it in a gradual way. If you can find a course, and I'm going to give you some tips, do they hold a taster session? I was extremely fortunate that the person who lives near me, who became a friend, and then when she started running mindfulness classes, I hadn't realised, but she is a really outstanding practitioner and teacher. She's actually been teaching mindfulness, well, it wasn't called that then, but she's been doing that for about 20 years. And I realise now through my encounters and work with other groups is how skillful she was. She does run a taster session. At that taster session, or if you don't have one, can you call up the instructor? Try and find out what's their experience. You also want somebody who's inspiring and somebody that you can trust and who creates a group in a very safe, trusting environment, because it can unleash some issues that people have needed to deal with over the years. It's not counselling, it's not coaching, it is something separate to that. There are apps, and hopefully you can find a movement class. So there are apps. There's 2 that I can recommend. Headspace is one, and there's another one called Mindful. I'll give you more details of the page. And certainly recommend doing something like yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong. Not necessarily down the gym. It's not a very mindful place. And the last point is that it's really important to keep practicing, and the best way to do that is to join a group, or if you've not got a group near you, as you go through the course, why not team up with the people who are doing the course with you and start a group? Every 2 weeks I join in with a group that's held nearby, and it's a fantastic way to keep topped up and keep me really grounded about a very busy schedule. So one of the last slides now really is around courses. There is a link here, bemindful.co.uk. If you go on there, they do list some of the classes that may be available in your area. You put in your postcode or your town and it tells you where they are. It's not all of them. And I, of course, personally would recommend my mindfulness teacher, Sue Weston, and I've put her website here, www.sueweston.com, and there's a picture of her there. She does offer residential courses down here in beautiful South Wales in Monmouthshire, and we've actually run them. She's run them for me because she's the trainer. I'm just a practitioner. If you want to look at this a little bit more, I'm thinking I'm not sure if I want to commit that far. There are 2 great TED Talks, the Technology, Education and Design website, sort of YouTube for intellectuals. We've got a link here, but if you Google TED and Andy Puddicombe, who runs this company Headspace, he has got incredible training and lineage around mindfulness as an ex-Buddhist monk himself, here based from the UK. He does a 20-minute talk about spending just 10 minutes a day to be mindful, and a lot of very successful, busy people have used that, and they've told me about it, and they said that they found that works for them, and I'm sure we could all find 10 minutes to help us. I also would recommend Brené Brown's TED Talk on vulnerability. I find that personally really helpful around changing my attitude towards life. The iPhone and Android apps, Head Start and Mindfulness Daily, I can certainly recommend. There are others. I've not really looked at them, but these 2 are pretty good. And books are very good, and somebody mentioned the Mark Williams book, Mindfulness in the Frantic World. That is a good book, and he does have a CD with meditations on there that you can listen to and record. That is pretty good. But John Kabat-Zinn, who started most of this off, and also the Buddhist nun Pema Chodron, anything she writes is incredibly insightful. And then lastly, if any of you fancy trying that stress test, it's called the Holmes and Rahe scale. I picked it off a really nice website called Mind Tools, and there's the link there to be able to find the questionnaire and take it yourself. And I went through and looked at it and said, oh look, 510 out of 300. Yes, stressful year. Well, if I thought about it for 2 milliseconds, of course I'm having a stressful year. But sometimes it's just nice to have that independently confirmed. I just felt a bit better. But then maybe that's me as a scientist. So lastly, if you're interested to know more, of course you can contact me, and I've got some links to mindfulness, some articles about mindfulness on my website under my blog area. You can find it from the Facebook or just Google me. You'll pick me up. You can see, I would like to thank you for your time and attention. I know your time is very precious. I really hope that's inspired you to at least investigate mindfulness a little more if you've not done that already. Really tried doing the course and really struggled with it. I'd encourage you to go back. I actually did it twice, and I did 2 residential courses as well to get the full benefit. And lastly, I'd like to thank Jo for inviting me to come on and talk to you about mindfulness. So Jo, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharon. That's very interesting and some very useful resources there. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask Sharon now? If you do, then just pop them into the box underneath. I didn't pick up on any questions as such that we needed to answer now. I've got a couple. How do you actually use mindfulness with your clients? Is there any particular steps that you take to cope with situations that appear to be heading towards being stressful? How do you actually use it in practice?
Thank you, Jo. It's a really good question because when we are busy, how do you find time to do things? The first one I use is to try and stay grounded as much as possible. Sometimes we can look at our schedules at the beginning of the week and we just know it's going to be a horrendous week. So I try to make sure that I can, if I can't do like a 45-minute meditation, then at least I'm doing 10 minutes or just 5 minutes or just sitting and stopping and breathing. So the first tip is to try and stay grounded as much as possible. The second tip is when my clients are going through, sometimes they're going through horrendous time and really struggling, and I can hear it. First one is I try to be a professional friend to them for a start, but I also teach them some of the techniques, and I can tell it when I can hear them on the phone. They're speaking very, very quickly, they're barely breathing at all, and so I teach them some of the techniques around the breathing. So the first thing I just say to them, look, just stop for a minute, just stop. And so I in the middle of the conversation, almost just like they stop and I just say, right, just breathe out. So I try and be very calm with them and getting them to breathe out. And then I just say, okay, right, now try breathing in slowly over a count of 3. And I just take them through literally a couple of breathing cycles and just ask them, how did that feel? And they often say, oh, I feel so much better. And you're like, yeah, that's all you need to do is just
So you do actually use it with them. Sorry, you do actually use it with them, and you're telling them that that's what you're doing. You're not just doing it.
Yeah, I actually just guide them through literally 2 breath cycles, which takes, 10 seconds. And they find that helps them a lot. So I said, look, if things are feeling really stressful, then just think, what would I tell you? I would tell you to breathe out. And so that's what they do. They think of me telling them to breathe out.
Okay.
And that I find they say, oh, that really helps me tremendously. And we have had clients come on to courses that we've run that I've noticed a huge difference around their attitude and their ability to cope with stress. So there's two things there, keeping grounded yourself and then just literally using a breath cycle.
So in terms of practicing every day with a busy schedule, Jonty's got a question here. How long should you meditate per day?
Well, Andy Puddicombe's shown you don't need to do more than 10 minutes, really. I found myself, if I've had a very, very bad day, something's happened that's really upset me, and it's not usually work, actually, it's usually life. when you're learning how to meditate, and there are some meditations you could do are particularly geared towards if you're in a really emotional state. There's one called Rain. Rain practice: recognition, exploring, acknowledgement, intention, and non-identities. It's a structured one from somebody called Tara Brach. I find that really helps calm me down when I'm almost beside myself. It means then I can sort of deal with something and then put it to one side. So, Jonty, it really depends. But meditating can seem such a delightful experience. It's almost something that I really look forward to doing.
And Karen's got another question now. How can you stop taking on other people's or your client's stress onto yourself if that's arising?
Oh, that's a big one, isn't it? It comes back to the grounding. And I think we find that, don't we? Particularly if we're parents, and as a mother, you kind of take on your children's pain and your maybe the pain of your parents, etc. People around you is not, well, I think maybe I'd say approach life not necessarily as you're mothering everybody. As you're an adult, you're really trying to help them, and it comes back to the grounding really here. So it's a case of thinking, well, I can best help them by being very calm and acknowledging what's going on for them, but staying kind of like sane. And Ruby Wax uses this about this thing of sane, because she's doing a lot of research into mindfulness, the comedian Ruby Wax, and it's staying sane yourself. But in fact, you could almost use this to say, well, actually, how can I best help them? And I think that's why I've built up such a large client list, is I do offer things that are different, and it's this personal dimension around you saying, well, look, I can help take that off you, and so you can really focus on things that's important to you, and me or my team, or I know other people who could help remove that burden, and that's how you can best help them. Don't get emotionally caught up in it, and that's the thing about managing the stress, is not to be caught up in their own stress and their own grip of it. You have to have a bit of a slight professional detachment and yet still help them.
Great. Okay. Jonty's going to try and do 10 minutes every day now.
Oh, Jonty, just download the Headspace app. It's got 10 meditations on there that are free, and if you like that, then you can I can't remember how much it is. I've got so many other meditations that I don't bother, but using his. But I know people are very senior in certain organisations who swear by doing the Headspace meditations.
It is very hard to sustain it, isn't it? Keep it going. So that is where the practice comes in, I guess, is to doing it.
It is, and if you know, and if you know it's really not going to happen that day. That's the other thing about mindfulness. You just say, look, okay, I'm going to be kind for myself today. It's not going to happen, but I can just breathe out. I can be having breakfast and just sit here and try and be mindful of eating my breakfast. So you can find a mindful couple of minutes at any time during the day. As I say, if I can practice on a crowded commuter train between London and Milton Keynes, and I'm not a teacher in this area, then it is possible to do that. And in fact, that's good practice. It's like, can I meditate, or can I just do some movement, no matter what? There's a movement we do in Qigong and you start at the beginning of the course, where you're just literally standing very grounded, putting even weight on your 2 feet, and you just literally just shift your weight very slightly from left to right. And Sue, our meditation teacher, always says this is really good to use in the queue at Lidl's or Waitrose or Tesco's, because those are very stressful times and we might be rushing to get through. So there's 2 little things you could do there.
That's great. Okay, well, we're just about out of time. If you do have any more questions that haven't been answered, then you could either leave them in the chat box now, or if you want to, if you think of them later, then do send them by email to editor@vapromag.co.uk, and we'll try and answer them on our replay page, which we'll send out to you shortly, so that you can go over this again if you'd like to. And so thank you very much to all of you for dialing in to join us. I hope you've enjoyed today's webinar, and thank you very much. So bye for now.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye, Jo.
Bye.